Hi, welcome to There Will Be Podcast. My name is Pilar.
And my name is Ryan.
And this is our pre-episode.
We're going to be calling it the establishment episode.
Yes, the establishment episode.
So basically the purpose for this establishment episode, we won't be going over one film like we'll do in just about every other episode that we do, but rather we're going to be listing several movies from various genres, and we're going to give our rating for each of those films, and then we'll also do a couple of our favorite movies as well. The kind of the goal or the purpose of that is to provide you guys with context for how we rate movies, and to give you an idea of what to expect for our full episodes going forward. Yeah, and overall, the goal of the podcast is so we're trying to develop like this catalog of movie critiques, which features a point value rating for each film. So over time, we'll be able to actually chart out these ratings and develop like a display of our personal movie rankings. And yeah, so we're not experts. We're just two people who really like movies, and we like rating stuff, and it just makes sense. So with that, let's start off by going into how we rate movies. Pilar, we have different styles. So Pilar, you let them know how you do it.
Yeah. So to give a little bit more of a background between the both of us, Ryan is an English major and I'm a psychology major, so I definitely feel like we approach movies in different ways. We do disagree on some, but we like a good bit of movies the same, I would say. Yeah. But the way I rate movies is I like to create little mini categories to help me kind of give a full number point to those categories, and then once I fill them up, I average them out, and then they create a big point rating, I guess.
Yeah. Rating from 0 to 10.
Yes, from 0 to 10. And the categories that I overlook is characters. Do I feel like the characters are consistent? Do I relate to them? Do I feel like they're believable? Plot, is it a story that I find to be interesting? Does it have a lot of plot holes or I never know how to say this word. Continuity errors. Things like that. Sound and music is another category that I loop together. There are some films that just have basic sound and it does its job, but then there are movies that definitely have a make or break kind of soundtrack or like score or even like no sound at all, and that really makes the movie. Dialogue is the next category, and that's do I feel like this is a believable conversations that people are going to be having in the world that they create. Also, is it quotable? That is one big thing that I look for. Is this movie quotable, even if it's like a tiny line? Next is film format, and that's pretty much editing. They're like the same with like sound. There's just some movies that are just edited to be, a movie. But then there are some that like the editing is pretty much what makes the movie so great. Next we have cinematography, and this is pretty much the look of the film. Does it look beautiful? Are the colors like vibrant, or does it have a storytelling with the way that the movie looks? Setting believability. This is pretty much the world that's created. It's for itself. Is it consistent as far as like what are you able to do in this world and get away with? Next we have originality, and like this goes for any movie adaptations or like franchises. Is a story I've heard before, like Cinderella story. We all know there's like 5 billion of them, but only one of them is good. But yeah, that's something I do look for. Or does it like take a new spin on a trope that we're used to seeing? Second to last, we have pace. Do I feel like the movie goes too fast or too slow? Does it need more scenes to like explain something? Could it hold something back that was unnecessary? Did it use its time wisely? Is what I'm looking for. And then lastly, we have personal enjoyment, and that's like, even if I think the movie is like god awful as far as like everything else on this list, there are just some movies that are hilarious or just fun to watch. And so I don't mind giving it a 10, even if it scores a 3 on everything else, because I really enjoy this movie. So,
I mean, some movies are just a good time.
yeah, some movies are just a good time. But you can go ahead and tell them your rating.
Yeah, so so I do it quite differently. I don't write down like these kind of things. I like to think that I have the numbers in my head, but for me, it's kind of just how I feel about the movie, how the movie impacts the way I feel about it, and I like to think about, you know, I can tell if a movie is good or not, and where does this particular film kind of resonate with other good movies that I've seen? Is it, is Parasite the best movie I've ever seen? It's very good, but is it better than one that I'll list here in a couple of minutes? I'm not sure, and that's kind of how I go about my ratings. We're going to start with some genres. We have action adventure is the first genre that we're getting into. Which action adventure movie do you have?
All right, so the action adventure movie that I would like to kind of like go off of is Scott Pilgrim. It's one of my favorite movies, and I rate it a 9.5. If you haven't seen the film, it is based off a comic book called Scott Pilgrim versus the World. It's right here. I ended up being like an original reader of the comic, and then the movie came out, and I think it sticks so close, so true to the story and the visuals, the action, and the soundtrack are just so amazing, and so that's why I feel like it's so high up in my like 9 category.
Yeah, I mean it's fantastic. I have a movie that's kind of on a completely different end of the vividness of Scott Pilgrim, and that's my action adventure movie is The Warriors. I give The Warriors an 8.5. The film quality wise, it's an old movie. It looks pretty awful. Like, it's super dark. You can't see what's going on half of the time. But just the way the world is built, the character, the characters are thorough. The costume design is really good, and I just really enjoy that movie. The next genre we have is comedy. Comedy can be a dark comedy or like a goofy comedy. So I don't know. For me, I chose The Princess Bride, which I give a 9.0 because that movie, at the end of the day, I can't think of a funnier movie than The Princess Bride. Every line is just a great quote. You know the quotes, and then when you're watching it, the way that they're delivered, it is still absolutely hilarious. Mm-hmm. Andre the Giant is just hilarious.
It is a very popular comedy.
Yeah.
Mine is not so popular. I don't even know. I know like one other person who saw this, and this is probably also one of the worst movies I've ever seen, but also one of my favorites. It's not another teen movie, which it's one of those parody movies, kind of like Date Night. No, not Date Night. Disaster movie, something like that. One of those cheap movies.
Scary movie.
Yeah, scary movie. But this one is more following rom-coms of the early 90s and 80s and stuff like that. But it's so aware of itself, and I think what makes me really enjoy it is how it's edited to be very like high but lowbrow at the same time.
Yeah, it's very lowbrow, but it's definitely the way it goes about it is very intelligent.
I think I kind of just want to highlight the specific thing that it does. And there's a girl who is completely naked throughout the whole movie, and they edit her subtitles. She's foreign. They edit her subtitles because she's not that great at English to be spaced out between her breasts, so you could just. You could just, read the subtitles, see a boob, read the subtitles. And I think that's so hilarious. That's fantastic.
What did you rank it?
Oh, I rated it 4.8. So it's pretty low down there, but it's really good. Next genre we have drama, and the drama that I chose is Room. Room is one of those movies where I went out of the movie theater. I was like, this is a great film, but it's really depressing, so I can never watch it again. But I do watch it multiple times to fall asleep too. It's so good. It is a 9.4 for me, and the story follows a woman and her child kind of trapped inside a room, and they are trying to find their way out into the world. But yeah,
that's one way to sum it up.
But yeah, the thing that makes it about this film that ranks it very high in my enjoyment, at least, is that the characters are so developed, especially for having such a young child actor. He is fantastic. Definitely very quotable.
Jacob Tremblay, I believe.
Yeah,
is his
Jacob
name.
Tremblay.
Yeah.
Is awesome. Who do you have for drama?
So for my drama, I have another movie that has child actors. This is the Florida Project that I have, which I rate so highly. It's a 9.7 in my book. It is just some truly realistic versions of a single mother who is struggling to raise her kid in this modern world that we live in, just outside of Disney World. Disney World in Florida?
Yeah, Disney World.
Okay, yeah, just outside of Disney World, and Willem Dafoe is in it. If you have not seen the movie, just go watch it. It's absolutely fantastic. I hope that we do an episode on it at some point. But yeah, so the next genre we're going to talk about is family film. For me, I chose the movie Hook, which is the old live action fresh take on Peter Pan as an adult, starring Robin Williams, of course. I give that movie an 8.2. I love it. It is a movie that anybody can watch, like sit down and enjoy. Like a kid would love the movie.
Generational.
Yeah. It kind of captures everyone that's in the room to see it. So yeah, I love that movie. And
what'd you rate? What'd you rate it?
I rated it an 8.2.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. What's your family movie?
My family movie is Frozen 2, which is another movie that I think is not very good, but I just enjoy it with every fiber of my being. It's part of a franchise, obviously from the Frozen franchise. I hate the first movie with every single fiber of my being, but this one is just so good because Elsa is so great and so gay, and the music is so loud and good. It's just so good. Every time I listen to it, it just makes me cry, and I think that makes a great film, even though it's not a good story. It's probably the worst story I've ever seen. I rate it a 5.7.
5.7 for Frozen 2. What about fantasy sci-fi?
Fantasy sci-fi, I have Into the Spider-Verse, which is a complete flip.
Oh, nothing. I think it's funny to follow up Frozen 2 with Into the Spider-Verse.
Well, it's so good. Okay, Into the Spider-Verse is definitely different from Frozen 2. Like, the story is it is also part of a franchise, but I think it's really original. And especially with its editing, I think it's a fresh take of what 2D, 3D can be.
Yeah.
And I think it's immaculate. I rated it a 9.8, and yeah, if you haven't seen it, it follows one of the Spider-Mans. Yeah, one of the Spider-Man alternate people, I guess, Miles Morales, I believe, and it kind of is a intro to his story and how he kind of sits within all the other Spider-Man characters.
It is very aware that there has been several Spider-Man movies in the past. So.
It's really good. And it's also one of those generational movies, too, that anybody can watch it. I do believe, like, it's... A lot of people see cartoons and think it's a child's film, but honestly, this is this is an adult film that could be seen by children,
Yeah.
that can be perceived by children too.
Yeah, I agree. For my fantasy sci-fi, I have the film Sorry to Bother You. I give that movie. Oh, you said 9.8 for Into the Spider-Verse. I give Sorry to Bother You an 8.0, a little lower than Into the Spider-Verse, but it is. And I wouldn't call it a generational movie.
No.
It is a movie that. It is unlike a movie that I have seen in the past, to be perfectly honest.
It definitely does like a 180 as far as realism.
It's kind of hilarious and entertaining, and then it goes off the deep end into kind of surrealism, like you said, and
it gets kind of crazy.
It's a memorable experience watching that movie.
I hope we can do a kind of sit in on that one, because that movie, I think it's great. The message is something that needs to be talked about, but there are some problems I feel with it, but which I can see why you gave it a 8.0. But it's honestly a really fun film. If you get a chance, please watch it. Lakeith Stanfield, such a good actor, so good.
For horror, which is the next genre, I have The Witch, which is a pretty recent modern or a pretty recent horror movie from Robert Eggers. I give this film an 8.4. I just love that it is. It's like it's a simplified. It's a minimalistic story. That's what I wanted to say, not simplified. It's a minimalistic take and fresh take on like this classic lore of a witch, and it definitely delves into some horror themes that I really enjoy, and I love that movie.
Yeah, it's really good too. But for my horror movie, I would have to go with It Follows. I also think it's a fresh take on a classic kind of monster lore, The Invisible Man. And so this movie, I rate it an 8.9. I do think that it does have some flaws, but it's definitely a fresh take on horror, and I really enjoyed it. It's one of the first horror movies I've seen. I'm kind of a scaredy cat, but I've been really adventurous this past couple years, and just kind of delving into what horror can be.
What about romance? What you got
for romance? What do I have? Oh, 5-Year Engagement. Okay, these are one of this movie is about a couple that's been together for a while, and then they decide to get engaged, and then it takes them forever to get married. It stars Jason Segel and Emily Blunt, and they are just so funny. They're fantastic. I definitely don't feel like it's like the most amazing story in the world, but I do feel like it's very realistic aside from the comedy. I do feel like, there are people in the world who get engaged, and it just takes a while for them to get married. And I mean, it shows that once you are like, find your soulmate or whatever, there's still going to be issues, and you still need to talk them out. And I do feel like it kind of sets a realistic kind of standard for what a couple is in the modern time.
Nice. For me, I have another good romance. Of course, we're gonna choose good movies, but I have Eternal Sunshine for the Spotless Mind, or of the Spotless Mind, starring Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet. It is a movie that personally I can't escape loving it. It gets me every single time. I give it a 9.8. Mainly because it's so original with this couple who has fallen out of love but can't escape the memories that they have of each other, like quite literally. And yeah, I mean, there's so much to say about that movie.
I would say that movie is very like heavily driven by its editing, and I feel like that's a main reason why I have editing on my list of rating people on things. Yeah. I did not say my rating for 5-Year Engagement, and that it was an 8.8.
Oh, 8.8 for 5-Year Engagement. Oops, sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
Next one is Thriller. The thriller that I chose to talk about is Eyes Wide Shut by Stanley Kubrick. I think it's Stanley Kubrick at his best. It delves into kind of the insecurities between two people in a relationship, and definitely a super dark and
Right.
yeah, grimy is a good word
Yeah.
for it. But I really enjoy watching it, and I give it a 9.3 for Eyes Wide Shut.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have not seen that movie in a long time. Kind of need to revisit it. But for my thriller, I chose American Psycho, which is definitely one of our favorite movies. I rate this a 10 out of 10.
Nice.
And the reason why is just it's so quotable. The music and sound is so good. The setting, the costumes, the characters are just so well developed. I just feel like it's one of the most quotable movies in my repertoire of movies I've seen. And I'm sure we'll probably have an episode on this because it's one of the best movies I've ever seen. Obviously, because I rated it a 10 out of 10. So
I'm glad you had a lot to say about it because I was worried that you rated it a 10 out of 10 because I was sitting here because I love that movie. But yeah, so next we're going to do a couple of movies that we don't share the same opinion on.
Right.
First set here, movies that are critically acclaimed that we don't really like individually. I'm not even sure how you feel, but for mine, a movie that was recently critically acclaimed that I was really excited to watch and was very let down by the movie is Hereditary. I give Hereditary a 6.3. You know, it's fine. It's a well-made movie. You know, it's a movie that looks like it was made in 2018 or whatever it was made. So, you know,
That's
kudos.
fair.
I just don't get I don't get it. I don't know.
Well, okay, so I love Hereditary. If I had to give it a rating, I'd probably rate it an 8.7. It's not the greatest movie I've ever seen. It's also not the scariest horror movie I've ever seen. I don't even think it was scary. I thought it was hilarious.
I thought it was boring.
But the movie that I have a split opinion with the public and with Ryan is Her. Her is one of those movies where, you know, it's trying really hard to be like indie and like, oh, what is the meaning of life and love? And it's just like so boring. It tries too hard to be quirky for my taste. I'm sick of seeing Scarlett Johansson be the object of lust, even if her body's not in it. I don't know. We'll talk about her later, but I rated her a 4.3. I was gonna rate it a 4.4, but that's my favorite number, so I can't have that.
Wait, is your favorite number 4.4 or is it 44?
44, but it's close
All right.
enough.
All right. That would be weird if your favorite number is 4.4. I give her a 9.5. That's how high I think of that movie.
He loves her. I don't know. All right. So next we're going to talk about our top three. I wouldn't say top three. Three of our favorite films.
Three of our favorites.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Ryan can start off with this.
Oh, okay. So it's kind of tough for me. We each use Letterboxd. I have 11 movies in my top 10. You have? How many
I have 50 movies in my top 25.
So we're not great at narrowing it down.
No.
But, we've done our best here. For me, the first movie I'd like to let you know is one of my favorite movies is Buffalo 66. It's a movie by Vincent Gallo, who I've heard is somewhat of an egomaniac, but for what it's worth, this film is just terrific.
Beautiful.
I love it with everything that I have. It's set in Buffalo, New York in 1971, I believe, and it follows this character who is just getting out of prison, and he wants to take revenge on the person who put him into prison, and it is actually a love story, believe it or not. So, yeah,
It's a quirky little love story.
Yeah.
It's very cute, very it has a certain feel where you're just like having a really good time.
Yeah. For that movie, I rate it a 9.2, but it is one of
Okay.
my all-time favorites.
For one of my all-time favorites, I have mid-90s, which I feel like it's very special because there's not a lot of movies on like boyhood and what it's like to be like growing up as a boy. So I definitely love mid-90s. I rate this movie a 9.5. I think it's shot beautifully. I think the writing I could use a little work, but I definitely think that the actors are really fresh and really cool. I learned that one of the actors is like an actual pro skater, like teenager, and I think that's really awesome that they got like. I mean, obviously they needed to get like somebody who needed to like who knows how to skate,
A good skater.
but they like got the best skater to act in their film, and I think that's really awesome. But yeah, I like it a lot because it's like a slice of life kind of film. It doesn't really have too much of a like story or meaning to it. I love those kind of films because it feels so relatable.
Fair enough. For me, the next one that I have to talk about as one of my favorites is American Psycho. You already brought it up. I also rate American Psycho a 10 out of 10, but it is for everything that the movie is. It's such a masterful. It's based on a novel, which I've tried to read. The novel is like reading a stream of consciousness from this psychopath on Wall Street, and the film really does a great job of putting it into visuals, but doing it in such a way that makes sense for the viewer. That being said, to this day, every time I watch it, I start to second guess myself about what is actually real in the movie.
Right.
And that's another reason why I love it.
It just makes you think. You're like in your own psychosis almost.
But Christian Bale's performance is everything. So quotable as well.
Very quotable. My next favorite movie is another film I have to give a 10 out of 10, and this movie is a Goofy movie. I love a Goofy movie. I grew up with it. It's another story that kind of deals with masculinity, and I feel like it's one of those movies that is very generational. You can watch it with anybody and understand it, and it's also like a story that we don't get a lot. It's a story about a father trying to connect with his teenage son, and his son kind of having to let go of his own kind of pride and wanting to be cool because his dad is so goofy. And it's just a wholesome, endearing story about a family coming together. And the songs are great. It's funny, iconic. It's just so good.
Yeah,
and
it's a really
there's really not much of anything to fault it for, so that's why I gave it a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, and the soundtrack is fantastic.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So for me, this particular movie, it is always the one that I define. If somebody asks me what my favorite movie is, this is the answer, and it is the film Before Sunset from the Before trilogy by Richard Linklater. And the reason why this movie is my favorite is basically because it captures the kind of like a mature look at what romance is, what like a like a like what kind of the bud of a romance is between two people. In this particular case, Before Sunrise has taken place 9 years earlier than Before Sunset, and while that movie is also fantastic, it really looks at romance through the lens of these like very young, immature, and fairly naive young guy and girl. And Before Sunset, the same people 9 years later, with all their life experience behind them. and I just love it. It's so realistic, and also the way the movie is portrayed, it's like it's happening in real time. Yeah, from start to finish. So, yeah. What you got for your
So for my last one of my favorite movies, I have I have Hard Candy, which is definitely a movie that kind of, if people ask me what is my favorite movie, I'd probably have to solidify Hard Candy as one of those movies, just because it is one of those movies that has almost, it has no soundtrack, no score to it. It is all about the sound that it makes. The story follows a young girl who meets this man online, and she goes over to his house, and then you feel some creepy vibes going on, and you get scared for her. But as the movie continues, you get a little bit more scared for him, and it kind of leaves you like perplexed on who is actually the villain in this film. And it's absolutely I don't know how to explain it. It's just so great. Elliot Page and Patrick Wilson star in this film, and they are just such great actors. I've been following Elliot since their very early films, like Juno.
Since Trailer Park Boys?
Yeah, sure. But yeah, I've been following them for a real long time, and yeah, I love that movie. It's so good. It kind of feeds into like my psychology love, I guess.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that's fair. I feel like that's a movie that I need to
yeah,
rewatch.
it's really tough to watch sometimes, but I just think it just kind of encapsulates everything that I love about film.
All right, cool. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for our movie ratings for this episode. Hopefully that gives you an idea of the movies that we like, what we think of them, and yeah, hopefully that kind of plays into whether or not you watch us going forward. But yeah, you want to talk about a couple of things that we're trying to do here?
Yeah. So as far as our movie podcast, we're going to try to put out a new podcast every 2 weeks, and then after we do each podcast, we'll present to you 3 films that we think that we would enjoy doing a podcast about, but you get the choice to choose. But you get the option to choose what film we're doing the next time that we do a podcast. So that'll happen at the end of each podcast. But for now, thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to this channel, and then subscribe to our follow us on Instagram, and that is There'll Be Podcasts, and our Twitter, which we're pretty new to, so please be nice to us. Is Pod from a Basket. Yeah, let us know if there's any movies that you would like us to talk about, or if there's any disagreements or agreements that you had with our ratings or explanations of things. And then just give us some tips of what you would like to see, what we can do better, or just, tell us about your day. We really want to create a little community going forward with this. We just really want to create something that we enjoy and that other people enjoy, to have a good time.
So after watching this video, if you want some more, we've already filmed our first official video on the namesake of our podcast, which is There Will Be Podcast. We have reviewed There Will Be Blood. So check that out if you're up for watching more of this.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.